questions for their 2026. I might be asking more than I am answering.
No, that's fine. I can become Mystic Meg. Here we go. I've just got to get in tune with my...
Meghan Markle's Archwell brand is said to be in jeopardy as it prepares to lose long-serving...
Well, King Charles has sensationally evicted Harry and Meghan from Frogmore Cottage in Windsor and reportedly offered...
The $14 million Montecito mansion just became ground zero for something Meghan Markle never saw coming. Former staff members are finally breaking their silence. And listen, what they're sharing isn't just gossip. We're talking specific, detailed accounts of what really happens behind those closed doors. And here's the thing, it totally contradicts everything the Sussexes have been selling us for years. Meghan's reaction when she found out about these leaks? Absolutely volcanic. Sources say she's furious, paranoid, desperately trying to figure out who's talking. And honestly, can you blame her? When you've spent years building this image of the compassionate humanitarian, the devoted wife, the last thing you need is the people who actually witnessed your daily behavior telling a whole different story. The couple who left the royal family screaming about privacy, who demanded the world respect their boundaries, who built their entire brand on being the authentic alternative to the palace they abandoned. Their own employees won't stop talking.
Into that jet like he was running from something. The flight plan, London. Now here's where it gets wild.
The walls that were supposed to protect their sanctuary, they're covered in cracks now. And through those cracks, the truth is pouring out. Now, before we get into what staff are actually saying, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what's coming is wild. We're talking about two totally different Meghans. What's really happening with Harry and secrets that could change everything you thought you knew. Drop a like too. Let's dive in. Get this. Dozens of employees have cycled through that Montecito mansion in just a few years. We're not talking about normal turnover here. Nannies, security personnel, housekeepers, personal assistants. They're all walking in and out like it's some kind of job fair. The revolving door's been spinning so fast, it's a miracle it hasn't flown off its hinges. And listen, every single person who walked through that door and then walked back out
reorganized their deal with Netflix in 2025. They are still in a partnership, but
they're carrying stories, memories, observations, details about what really happens when the cameras stop rolling. Now, when you hire someone to work in your home, especially a home like this, you're letting them see everything. They're there when you wake up, when you're stressed, when you're arguing, when the public persona drops and the real you comes out. They serve the food, clean the rooms, manage the schedules, witness the dynamics between you and your partner. There's no hiding from the people who make your life run smoothly. And the Sussexes have had so many people come and go that the trail of potential witnesses stretches across the entire Southern California service industry. Each person who left took their experiences with them, their observations, their version of events. So check this out. Some staff members started keeping detailed personal notes during their time there.
She believed would be her grand return to the Invictus stage. She had planned every detail with the precision of someone stepping...
Not because they were planning to sell secrets or spill tea later. That wasn't the intent at all. They were doing it to protect themselves in case disputes came up down the line. You know, document everything, cover yourself, have something to reference if someone tries to twist the facts or blame you for something that wasn't your fault. It's actually pretty smart when you think about it. But now those notes, the ones meant purely as protection, are coming in handy for totally different reasons. What was supposed to be a safety net has become something else entirely. A detailed account of life behind those carefully guarded walls. And what's making some former employees feel emboldened to speak up now? They watched Harry and Meghan publicly criticize their former royal staff, talking about how poorly they were treated at the palace, how the institution failed them.
We're going to see more as ever and new ventures from Meghan. I feel like yes.
100%. She is going to continue.
How the people around them weren't supportive or kind. But then these same employees witnessed how Harry and Meghan treated their own staff here in California. The hypocrisy became too much to stomach in silence. If you're calling out others for mistreating workers while doing the exact same thing yourself, maybe worse, people are going to notice and they're going to talk. The irony of this whole situation is just staggering. Harry and Meghan left the royal family claiming they desperately needed privacy. They demanded the world respect their boundaries. They built their entire brand, their whole post-royal identity, on being this authentic, relatable alternative to the stuffy, restrictive palace life they abandoned. Privacy was supposed to be their sanctuary, their fresh start, their escape from the prying eyes of the British press. They bought this sprawling $14 million estate with its 16 bathrooms, its pristine grounds.
They've spoken out after their charity, the Archwell Foundation, was declared delinquent in the US.
Its celebrity neighbors, all of it protected by California privacy laws and surrounded by security measures that would make even the most determined paparazzi think twice before getting too close. Instead, that fortress has sprung more leaks than you can count. The very people they hired to maintain their private sanctuary, to keep their lives running smoothly, to protect their secrets, those people won't stop talking. The message was supposed to be clear when they bought that property. New life, new terms, total control. But control's an illusion when you've got dozens of people cycling through who've all got eyes, ears, and memories. They wanted privacy and got the exact opposite. The walls that were supposed to protect them are covered in cracks now. And through those cracks, everything's pouring out. Staff members have started describing something they call the two Meghans. And listen, if these accounts are accurate, the difference between the two is absolutely jarring.
A fellow at the New Culture Forum. Rafe, good to have you with us. I mean, the Markles and the Harrys.
There's camera Meghan, the warm, empathetic woman who speaks passionately about kindness and care at charity events. The one who gives speeches about treating everyone well, who positions herself as this beacon of humanitarian values. And then there's private Meghan, the one staff encountered behind closed doors when nobody else was watching. According to these accounts, those two people might as well be strangers. The specific details coming out are pretty intense. Sources say Meghan has extraordinarily particular requirements about her environment. We're talking temperature settings that can't be off by even a single degree. The thermostat has to be exactly right at all times, no exceptions. Then there's the food situation. Elaborate restrictions that change frequently enough to keep kitchen staff in constant confusion. What's acceptable one week might be completely off limits the next, with no clear pattern or reasoning that staff could predict.
Did with Oprah, is it any wonder that the last months of the lives of the Duke and the Queen were made even more miserable? But these two miseries saved.
And the expectations about how her personal spaces should be arranged, down to the millimeter. Everything has its precise place, and even the slightest deviation gets noticed. One former employee said that nothing was ever quite right. Even when instructions were followed perfectly, exactly as requested, there was always something to criticize. Always something that could have been better, should have been different. The goalposts kept moving and perfection was expected but never actually defined. So failure became inevitable, no matter how hard anyone tried. But it's not the temperature control or the pillow arrangements that have people really talking. It's the mood swings, the allegations about what happens when things go even slightly wrong. Insiders paint a picture of watching Meghan completely lose her composure over what they characterize as minor issues.
Mansion you worked so hard to call home, only to realize that its beautiful walls were harboring whispers.
We're talking about a scheduling miscommunication that took less than 10 minutes to resolve, and the reaction was apparently off the charts. Another source recounted witnessing her berate a young assistant over something small, going at them until the employee was literally in tears, visibly shaken. And then, get this, moments later, she turned around and recorded a video message about the importance of treating people with respect and kindness. Let that sink in for a second. One moment reducing someone to tears, the next moment preaching kindness to the camera. The whiplash is real. The cognitive dissonance required to pull that off is extraordinary. This is a woman who's built her entire brand on being caring, on empathy, on being a voice for people who don't have one. She's given speeches about kindness at the United Nations.
So outrageous it could have doubled as a movie script. One insider said even the most unflappable Hollywood PR pros.
She's written about treating service workers with respect. She's positioned herself as the enlightened alternative to what she called the cold, uncaring royal institution. The whole persona is built on being better, more aware, more humane than the system she left behind. And yet, staff accounts tell a totally different story about how she treats her own employees. One particularly harsh quote has been making the rounds among people who follow this stuff closely. A former staff member said she treats employees like they're invisible until something goes wrong. And then suddenly you're the most visible person in the room and not in a good way. Another person's take on the experience, feeling like you could never do anything right. Like perfection was expected, but the definition kept changing. So you were set up to fail from the start.
This week, as long-simmering resentment towards the Duke and Duchess of Sussex erupted into full-blown riots and civil unrest.
That's what working there was like, according to these sources. A constant state of anxiety where you never knew what version of your employer you'd encounter on any given day, where the rules shifted without warning and criticism was the only consistent feedback you'd receive. The contrast between the public image and the private reality couldn't be more stark. And that contrast is exactly what has former employees feeling like their silence was protecting someone who didn't deserve that protection. Insiders say Harry's transformation has been heartbreaking to watch. This is the guy who arrived in California back in 2020 looking genuinely excited and optimistic, ready for his new adventure. The prince who used to be known for his warmth, his humor, his genuine connection with people, that guy seems to have vanished. Now, staff describes someone who seems lost, withdrawn, increasingly uncertain about his place in his own household.
Well, you're going to be off there in California, you're enjoying the sunshine, you've got a great lifestyle, you'll probably fly a bit around the...
The change has been dramatic enough that multiple people have taken notice and talked about it among themselves. What's really concerning, according to sources, is how isolated Harry's become. And we're not just talking about missing his old friends or feeling homesick. Staff say Harry rarely makes phone calls to his family back in the UK without Meghan being present in the room. Think about that for a second. This is a grown man who can't have a private conversation with his own father or brother without his wife listening in. One source watched Harry attempt to call his brother William, and within minutes, Meghan had inserted herself into the conversation. Just walked in and became part of it, whether Harry wanted that or not. But it goes deeper than that. His phone seems to be monitored in some way. Staff noticed that even when Meghan wasn't physically present during calls,
documentary about Princess Diana. This is the same project that his team vehemently denied just months ago. But as the financial walls close in on the...
She somehow knew who was calling and what was being discussed. How does that work unless someone's keeping tabs? People from Harry's life before California have expressed real frustration about their inability to reach him directly anymore. The access just isn't there like it used to be. And when these connections from his past do manage to get through to him, they say he sounds different. Guarded, like he's carefully choosing every word because he knows someone might be listening or because he'll have to answer for the conversation later. The visual that staff paint is honestly tough to hear. They talk about seeing Harry wander the grounds of that massive estate alone, just walking around by himself with what one person described as a profoundly sad expression. The playful, mischievous prince who used to charm everyone he met,
offering a welcome respite from the relentless glare of the paparazzi. But for one particular high-profile couple,
who had this infectious energy and genuine warmth, where'd that guy go? Staff say he's been replaced by someone who's just going through the motions, getting through the day, existing rather than living. And think about what Harry gave up for this life. Everything. His family, not just the institution, but actual family relationships he'd had his entire life. His country, where he was beloved despite his mistakes. His military career, which, by all accounts, was the thing he valued most. The role where he felt he truly mattered. Lifelong friendships with people who knew him before the fame, before the titles, before everything got complicated. He walked away from all of it, burned bridges with his father, with William, with the memory of his grandmother who'd just passed, even denounced his own country on international television.
Once existed and then didn't. Photos that have allegedly surfaced before, only to vanish just as quickly.
What did he get in return for all those sacrifices? According to staff, isolation, an increasingly controlling environment, a shrinking circle of contacts, the ability to be himself, apparently not. The freedom he thought he was gaining doesn't seem like it worked out that way. The really heartbreaking part, according to sources, is that Harry misses home more than he's willing to admit publicly. Staff say he's expressed private longing for England, for the friends he can't reach anymore, for the military connections he treasures, for the life he used to have. Even, and this is striking, for family members he's publicly criticized and cut ties with. One insider said Harry sometimes watches coverage of royal events with an expression that can only be described as grief. Like he's mourning something he chose to leave, but didn't fully understand the weight of losing.
But he knew about Meghan Markle, except Harry. And now, Tyler Perry...
He's apparently brought up the possibility of spending more time back in the United Kingdom, testing the waters, maybe seeing if there's a path back to some version of his old life. And every time he brings it up, Meghan shuts it down immediately. No discussion, no compromise, just a hard no. That door stays closed. Behind the scenes at Archwell, their foundation, it's apparently complete chaos. And when I say chaos, I mean the kind of dysfunction that combines total control with absolutely zero progress. Meghan's reportedly positioned herself as the micromanager-in-chief, controlling every single detail of every project while somehow managing to ensure that almost nothing actually gets accomplished. It's a special kind of organizational disaster that staff say they've never experienced anywhere else. The stories about these endless rebranding meetings are wild.
Well, Kevin McGrath still with me. I've been joined now by Talk TV contributor Esther Cracker and historian and author Tessa Dunlop. Well,
sources describe sessions that drag on for hours, sometimes spanning multiple days, where every tiny aspect of Archwell's presentation gets picked apart, debated, and ultimately changed, and then changed again the following week. One insider put it perfectly. They said it felt like being trapped in a loop where progress is impossible because the destination keeps moving. You can't reach a goal when the goal itself won't stay still long enough to aim for it. Staff talk about the website being redesigned over and over again. Logos getting scrapped and replaced, then scrapped again. Mission statements written, rewritten, completely overhauled, and then rewritten once more. All of this happening while the actual charitable work, the whole supposed purpose of the foundation, grinds to a complete halt. Nothing's getting done for the people they claim to want to help.
And resolute, the kind that commands attention without raising a decibel. Tyler Perry, the powerhouse filmmaker.
Because everyone's too busy arguing about fonts and color schemes and whether the messaging sounds authentic enough. And here's the thing that really gets people. There's no clear vision driving any of this. Staff say it's just whatever gets Harry and Meghan attention that particular week. They'd spend literal months developing a project, getting it polished and ready to launch, building momentum, And then suddenly the priorities would shift entirely because something else caught their attention. Something that seemed more appealing or more likely to generate headlines. The waste of time, money, and human energy that caused is staggering. People pouring their effort into projects that just get abandoned. The foundation recently made some changes to its operational structure that raised eyebrows among people who understand how nonprofits operate.
Behind manicured hedges and ocean views, it's a place where privacy is currency and discretion.
The Sussexes framed these changes as strategic moves, smart pivots that would help them serve their mission better. But critics looked at it and saw something different. Fundamental problems with how the whole thing was being managed from day one. And now, with staff confirming the internal mess, that criticism looks pretty spot on. The burnout among Archwell employees has been severe, according to sources. We're talking about people putting in around-the-clock hours to meet deadlines that constantly shift, sacrificing their personal lives, pushing themselves to deliver, and then watching all that effort get tossed aside when new priorities suddenly emerge out of nowhere. One former employee said they'd never experienced such a demoralizing environment. Effort was demanded, but never rewarded. When projects failed or got abandoned, staff took the blame. But when something actually succeeded,
anymore. This is the financial reckoning that royal watchers have been predicting for years, and it is finally arriving at the gates of that.
Credit went entirely to Meghan and Harry. The pattern was consistent and absolutely crushing to morale. Think about what that does to people. You sign up thinking you're going to be part of this foundation, doing good in the world, making a real difference, contributing to something meaningful. Instead, you end up in meeting after meeting that goes nowhere, developing projects that get canceled before they launch, getting blamed for failures that weren't your fault, and watching the actual charitable mission take a back seat to brand management and publicity chasing. No wonder people burn out and leave. The irony is thick here. Harry and Meghan left the royal family partly because they wanted to do meaningful humanitarian work on their own terms, without institutional constraints holding them back. They were going to show everyone how it's really done.
Before the entire operation collapsed around her. Let that number sink in for a moment. 11 publicists, 5 years.
How you can make a genuine impact when you're not weighed down by centuries of tradition and protocol. Fast forward a few years, and their own foundation is allegedly drowning in dysfunction, unable to execute even basic initiatives because the leadership can't get out of its own way. The institutional problems they ran from, turns out they brought their own version along for the ride. The official story about what happened with the Spotify deal? Creative differences, they said. But sources who witnessed the negotiations say that narrative doesn't even scratch the surface of what really went down. This wasn't about content disagreements or artistic vision. It was about behavior, about an inability to function as collaborative partners, and about demands that made working together essentially impossible. And based on what insiders are...
Tipping point in any feud of this nature, where if one side just continues to publicly attack.
Sharing, the Sussexes have nobody to blame but themselves. Staff say they witnessed heated phone calls with Spotify executives that left everyone in the room feeling uncomfortable. We're talking about conversations that got tense enough that people who weren't even on the call could sense something was going seriously wrong. Sources paint a picture of Meghan refusing to accept any editorial notes or feedback from the network. She demanded complete creative control despite having zero experience in podcasting. Treated professional guidance like personal attacks instead of what it actually was. Experienced people trying to help create successful content. One insider watched her on a call with network representatives and said she was dismissive, condescending, absolutely unwilling to consider that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the expert in the room. Another person said watching that deal collapse in real time was
factor, money. In fact, Harry and Meghan reportedly sold themselves for $100,000 each.
Genuinely painful because you could see it happening with every conversation, every rejected note, every instance where collaboration could have happened but didn't. The situation with Netflix follows a similar pattern. That Polo documentary everyone saw. Apparently, that was a last resort, something they threw together after multiple other pitches got turned down by executives. The Sussexes pitched numerous projects that networks looked at and deemed completely unworkable. Either the concepts were underdeveloped, the budgets didn't make sense, or the demands attached made collaboration impossible from the start. One source put it bluntly. They wanted control without accountability, credit without putting in the effort, and prestige without doing the actual work that earns it. And get this, the tension between Harry and Meghan over these Hollywood disappointments has become a major source of conflict in their relationship.
Mode over money. This is not speculation anymore. This is the financial reckoning that royal watchers have been predicting for years, and it is finally arriving at the gate.
Sources recount arguments about whose fault all these collapsed opportunities are. Meghan blames Harry's lack of star power and media training. She thinks his inability to perform on camera or handle media responsibilities has cost them deals. Harry, on the other hand, feels like Meghan's refusal to accept any guidance or work within industry norms has sabotaged everything they tried to build. One person familiar with the situation watched them argue about a botched pitch and said it was like seeing two people realize simultaneously that their business partnership is a complete disaster, but neither one willing to admit their own role in creating that disaster. Staff who've witnessed these arguments say the blame gets thrown back and forth with no resolution, no acceptance of shared responsibility. It's always the other person's fault, never a mutual acknowledgement that maybe they both contributed to the problems.
And is under threat, multiple sources tell Page 6. On Monday, it was announced that
that kind of dynamic doesn't fix itself. It just gets worse over time as the setbacks pile up and the finger pointing intensifies. The financial implications of all this are substantial. Harry and Meghan signed deals worth tens of millions of dollars, money that was contingent on actually delivering content that performed well, that audiences wanted to watch, that justified the investment. With Spotify gone completely and Netflix reportedly dissatisfied with what they've produced, that income stream they were counting on to fund their California lifestyle has slowed to barely a trickle. The financial pressure that creates isn't just about money, it affects everything. The mood in the household, the tensions in their marriage, the stress that everyone around them can feel. When you're hemorrhaging money and opportunities simultaneously.
Right now, Prince Harry is making desperate calls, begging people to undo what can't be undone because the man who saved.
When the Hollywood dream you sold everyone on is crumbling publicly, that pressure has to go somewhere. And according to staff, it's going into their relationship, into their interactions with employees, into every aspect of how they function as a couple and as business partners. The empire they thought they were building has become a source of constant stress instead of the success story they promised everyone it would be. Staff members say the marriage between Harry and Meghan is showing some serious strain. And we're not talking about the normal ups and downs every couple goes through. The specific details people are sharing paint a picture of two people who are growing apart while still maintaining that united front whenever cameras are around. It's the contrast between the public image and the private reality that has people who've witnessed both versions talking about.
Another one bites the dust like 2 weeks later. This time, a far more devastating blow, though. This one was a lot.
What they've seen. Separate schedules have become the norm rather than the exception. Meghan spends most of her time in Los Angeles attending meetings and events, networking, building her brand. Harry stays back at the Montecito estate, increasingly alone with his thoughts and his shrinking circle of people to talk to. They're living separate lives in a lot of ways, just happening to share the same address. And according to sources, separate bedrooms on certain nights isn't an occasional thing anymore. It's become regular enough that staff have noticed it as a pattern, rather than a one-off situation. People who work there recount seeing them operate like roommates, more than romantic partners. They pass each other in hallways, exchange brief words about logistics or schedules, but there's no warmth in those interactions, no connection. One former employee said you could literally feel the temperature drop when they were in the same room together.
Nothing to do with him. The UK press was tearing him apart daily, so they accepted. They flew on Perry's plane. They moved into...
The tension was that obvious, that palpable, even when they weren't actively having an argument. Just being in the same space created this uncomfortable atmosphere that everyone around them picked up on. The disagreements about their children have become particularly intense. Harry and Meghan have completely different views on how Archie and Lilibet should be raised, especially when it comes to their exposure to the public and media. Meghan pushes for more visibility for the kids. She sees them as assets in maintaining relevance, in attracting opportunities and attention. The children's public appearances, photos, mentions in projects. She views all of that as strategically valuable. Harry pushes back hard on that. He wants to protect them from exactly the kind of media attention that he believes damaged his own childhood, that contributed to his mother's death, that left psychological scars he still carries.
Scheduled hires were frozen, budget reviews were happening weekly, what was once a booming brand backed by celebrity buzz and major...
Insiders say they've witnessed arguments about whether to include the children in various projects or public appearances, and these aren't small disagreements. One source called it one of the most intense fights they'd ever seen between any couple, period. When you're arguing about your kids' futures, about how to protect them or whether they need protecting at all, those disagreements cut deep. They're not about logistics or money or career moves. They're about fundamental values and what kind of parents you want to be. And here's something that staff say is heartbreaking to witness. Harry misses home more than he's willing to admit publicly, much more. He's expressed private longing for England, for the life he used to have, for connections he can no longer maintain, the old friends he can't reach anymore, the military world he treasured, where he felt like he had genuine purpose and wasn't just a celebrity figure. Even family members he's publicly criticized and cut ties with.
Media post, no defense of her daughter's godfather, nothing. Remember, this is the same woman who speaks out about everything, who writes up.
Staff say he expresses missing them in private moments. One particularly striking detail that's been shared. Harry sometimes watches coverage of royal events on TV with an expression that people around him can only describe as grief, like he's mourning something he chose to walk away from, but didn't fully grasp the weight of what he was losing until it was already gone. The regret is visible, according to those who've seen it. He's brought up the possibility of spending more time back in the United Kingdom. Not moving back permanently, but maybe splitting time, maintaining some connection to the place and people he left behind. Testing whether there's any path back to some version of his former life. And every single time he raises this idea, Meghan shuts it down immediately.
Harm will remain the most meaningful of my professional life. These families...
There's no discussion, no compromise, no exploring whether it might work. Just an instant hard no. That door stays firmly closed. Staff have also witnessed something else that's tough to watch. Meghan dismissing Harry's opinions in front of employees, undermining his authority when he tries to make decisions, contradicting his statements. One source put it this way. It's like watching someone being systematically diminished over time, their confidence getting eroded through 1,000 small cuts. The prince, who once commanded attention in any room he walked into, has become a supporting character in his own life. And it's not just former employees who are sharing these concerns anymore. contractors, business visitors, people who came through that mansion for various professional reasons. They're backing up what the staff has been saying. And when multiple independent sources who don't know each other start describing similar experiences,
full-time person left at Archwell. Hello, everybody. I'm Beebs Kelly. Welcome back to another video. Before we get started,
the pattern that emerges carries real weight. It becomes harder to dismiss as just disgruntled workers or people with an axe to grind. One particularly detailed account comes from a contractor who handled renovations at the estate. According to this person, the entire experience of working in the Sussex home was defined by one feeling: walking on eggshells, never knowing which version of the household dynamics you'd encounter on any given day. Would it be the warm, welcoming environment? Or would it be tense and hostile? There was no way to predict it, no pattern you could identify to prepare yourself. This contractor said Meghan was incredibly unpredictable. Warm and gracious one moment, then cold and sharply critical the next, with no apparent trigger for the shift.
Just a reunion. This was a reckoning, a second chance that turned into a second eruption. This is the day
You could be having a perfectly pleasant interaction, everything seeming fine, and then something would change in an instant. The contractor's crew actually developed a system of hand signals to warn each other when her mood seemed to be shifting. That's how volatile the atmosphere got. They needed a nonverbal warning system just to navigate the workday. Being caught off guard by her displeasure, not being prepared for the sudden change, could be professionally devastating. It could mean getting blamed for things that weren't your fault or facing criticism that seemed completely disproportionate to whatever minor issue had occurred. The way Meghan interacted with various service workers, delivery people, maintenance staff, outside service providers, contradicts everything she's publicly claimed to stand for. Sources talk about exchanges that range from dismissive to outright hostile.
Her team had already begun scouting film angles for a potential behind-the-scenes special. Everything was locked in for a triumphant return to the Invictus.
One account that's been circulating involves Meghan going off on a catering employee over what witnesses saw as a perceived slight during an event. The reaction was so over the top that people who witnessed it were genuinely shocked, especially given all her public statements about respecting working people and their dignity. Think about the disconnect there. This is someone who's positioned herself as an advocate for equality, someone who speaks about the importance of recognizing the humanity in everyone regardless of their job or social status. But behind closed doors, according to these accounts, her behavior towards service workers tells a completely different story. The feminist icon who gives speeches about empowerment, treating working class people like they're beneath her notice. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some A-list visitors have turned down return invitations after their first experience at the Montecito mansion.
And these guys are no longer part of it, from what I can see. So that's just a bit of a side note, because it got me talking about
High-profile guests who came once and decided they had no interest in coming back. According to sources, these visitors felt uneasy about various aspects of their visit. The overall atmosphere felt off. The dynamics between Harry and Meghan were awkward to witness. How staff members were being handled in front of guests made people uncomfortable. When you invite someone to your home and they leave feeling that uneasy, they're not going to accept the next invitation. Word has apparently spread in certain Hollywood circles. Insiders say there's talk that dinner at the Sussexes is an evening to avoid. The energy's weird, the experience is more stressful than enjoyable, and people would rather make polite excuses than sit through another visit. That's devastating for a couple trying to establish themselves in the entertainment industry.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are truly starting to show their true colors, as it has become very apparent with
Your social capital matters in Hollywood, and if people are actively avoiding your dinner parties, that's a problem. The Sussex social circle has contracted significantly since they arrived in California. The those celebrity friendships they used to talk about all the time, post photos with, reference in interviews, a lot of those have cooled considerably. Former close contacts are now keeping polite but noticeable distance. Some people attribute this to all the negative attention surrounding the couple, the controversy that follows them everywhere. But others suggest that what visitors have experienced firsthand might explain better why these famous friends have quietly stepped back. When your own guests report feeling uneasy, when the people you invite into your home leave with negative impressions they share with others, invitations become harder to extend and way easier to decline. The dam's broken now.
That sprawling estate supposedly bought for millions wasn't featured because it couldn't withstand scrutiny. Rumors swirled.
Former employees who'd been hesitating, who'd been keeping quiet despite what they witnessed, are watching this coverage and reconsidering that silence. There's a tipping point where staying quiet starts to feel wrong, where you have to ask yourself why you're protecting people who treated you so poorly when you were trying your best to serve them well. The picture emerging from all these staff accounts is pretty comprehensive, and it's not a good look. We're seeing descriptions of a household in chaos, a marriage that's visibly straining, professional relationships that got burned and abandoned, and a carefully constructed public image that apparently bears no resemblance to what the people closest to the couple actually witnessed. Every single pillar that the Sussex operation was built on, authenticity, compassion, partnership, purpose, is getting undermined by the very people who watched it being constructed from the inside out.
Life waiting in the wings while others stole the spotlight. First Diana, then William and Catherine. He is not about to let history repeat itself.
Staff members see everything. They're there for the private moments that public relations teams can't control or spin. They observe the contradictions between what someone says their values are and how they actually behave when nobody's watching. And when enough of them start sharing those observations, when their accounts line up and corroborate each other, you can't PR your way out of that. No amount of carefully crafted statements or media appearances can counteract the weight of multiple first-hand witnesses telling similar stories. Here's the real question we should all be asking. If even half of what these staff members are sharing turns out to be accurate, how much longer can the Sussex brand actually survive? Think about it. They built their entire post-royal identity on being different, on being better, more authentic, more compassionate than the institution they walked away from. That was the whole pitch.
Because look at this from Princess Carmichael on that disastrous Emma Grey Day interview.
Leave behind the cold, restrictive palace life and show everyone how it should really be done. But if these accounts hold up under scrutiny, they're not actually all that unique. Same dysfunction, just in a new location with better weather and arguably worse accountability. At least the palace had centuries of protocol and oversight. What's the accountability structure in Montecito when things go wrong? Who's keeping anyone in check? And what about Harry in all of this? Does he fully understand the extent of what former staff members are saying about his wife, about their marriage, about the household he thought he was building? Has anyone been honest with him about how dramatically his image has shifted among people who once genuinely adored him? Or is he as isolated from uncomfortable realities as he apparently is from his former friends and family members back home?
Doesn't happen. That is a complete lie. And there's also a threat in that sentence because it says here that they're going to...
The fortress they built to protect their privacy has been breached from within. The staff they hired to maintain that sanctuary, to keep their lives running smoothly, to protect their secrets, those same people are sharing everything they witnessed. And whatever the complete story ultimately turns out to be, it's working its way toward the light. When the people who served you, who saw you at your most unguarded, start talking in this kind of detail, that's very difficult to contain. The walls have cracks. And through those cracks, everything's pouring out. Whether the Sussex brand can survive that flood remains to be seen. So, what do you think? Are we watching the Sussex brand finally crumble under the weight of truth? Or is this just another wave they'll weather? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video opened your eyes to what's really happening behind those Montecito walls, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Trust me, this story's nowhere near over. I'll see you in the next one.